Oh, looks like I'm live. What is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Erik, and this is Erik Bets Fights with my very first fight day live stream. Actually, it's my first live stream ever. I didn't get a chance to put out my usual full card breakdown best bets video this week, and so I'm kind of running out of time here. I've got the best bets show with the DFS over on DFS by the numbers coming up in less than an hour and a half here, but I wanted to pop on my channel and at least get some quick thoughts out and go through my bets. I am hoping to get through this in like 20, 30 minutes, and there's 15 fights, so I'm just going to jump right in and do it. This is my first time using StreamYard. I mean, I've been on StreamYard with the DFS by the numbers, but this is my first time actually using it myself and sharing my screen and blah, blah, blah. So bear with me here. There's nobody in the live stream anyway, so I'm talking to myself. But yeah, if you watch this video later and I'm kind of fumbling around, that's why. I'm kind of just figuring out what I'm doing here. But I am going to try to share my very, very brief thoughts on each fight, and then we will end by going through the bets that I've got for this card. We're going to go ahead and start at the top of the card. We've, of course, got Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker, the rematch here. I did put Adesanya in a parlay, but I've seen a lot of people, well, not a lot, some people on Whittaker as an underdog here, and I don't hate that bet. I did see an interview with Whittaker where he talked about wrestling, talked about, the Jan Blachowicz fight and seeing how, okay, now we've got a blueprint for beating Izzy. We've seen it happen. And also, I think Whittaker went into the first fight with Adesanya with sort of the mindset that GSP had the first time he fought Hughes. I think Whittaker kind of had Adesanya on a pedestal a little bit. I don't think he went into that fight thinking that he could win. And, we'd never seen Adesanya be beaten before that. And now I think Whittaker's mindset is a little different because obviously he was beaten by a bigger guy in Jan Blachowicz, but we've seen a blueprint. We've seen it happen. We've seen Adesanya be defeated. And there just was something different in the interview I saw with Whittaker where he's like, okay, I know how to make this happen. I think he believes that he can win the fight now, and I don't think he believed that before. And he did specifically mention that he plans to use his wrestling. I think his best bet here is to just go to his wrestling early and often, chain takedowns together, work to get Adesanya to the ground. Because, not that Whittaker looked bad on the feet in the first fight. He did pretty well. He caught Adesanya a few times, but you don't want to go in there and kickbox with Israel Adesanya. That's just not a great idea. Oh, Jack Attack just popped in. What's up, Jack Attack? This is my first ever live stream. I don't really know what I'm doing with using StreamYard and stuff, and I'm trying to get this done in like 20, 30 minutes, so I'm rushing through real quick here with just some thoughts on the fights. The co-main event is Derrick Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa. This is one of those fights where if you've seen my videos before, you've probably heard me say that when there's a fight that just screams variables, I tend to stay away from that fight. This is a fight where if I was going to bet something, I'd probably bet a total or a prop rather than trying to pick a side. Because when you've got two huge guys with knockout power who, don't necessarily have the most technical approach, the most measured approach, who are kind of just going to be coming out there looking to get it done. I don't typically feel real comfortable picking a side in that spot. However, there's always the angle that Derrick Lewis, it's hometown fight for him tonight, I think, isn't it? He's gonna be looking to put on a show. He's what is he, like a minus 170 favorite or something like that? You can get him at. I had this number in front of me here. Yeah, you can get Derrick Lewis by KO in round one at plus 175. I don't hate a shot on something like that, but I'm not going to be betting this fight personally. Next up, we've got Jared Cannoneer versus Derek Brunson in the middleweight division. I did bet on Brunson pretty early on here when he was at plus 170, and then the line moved in such a way that I was able to hedge out and guarantee myself a little bit of profit with a bet on Cannoneer, so I went ahead and did that. Yeah, I wimped out instead of riding with the underdog in Brunson. I think Brunson can probably get takedowns here, but I'm not convinced that he can keep Cannoneer down. And if Cannoneer is able to pop back up and Brunson has to work for a takedown again, if it turns into that kind of fight, I just think Brunson's gonna get worn down and gonna get tired, and Cannoneer is gonna catch him. That's all I'm gonna say about that one. Like I said, I'm trying to get through this in like 20, 30 minutes, so I'm rushing a little bit. Next, we've got Alexander Hernandez versus Hanato Moycano. Watching this fight, I kept coming back to the idea that, obviously Hernandez is powerful and he's a decent striker, but I kept coming back to the idea that there's just not a lot to his game. It's kind of rote. It's kind of, I feel like he sort of runs out of ideas. And so I do lean Moycano here. I don't mind a shot on Moycano by submission. I think if I remember correctly, I think Hernandez has never been submitted, so you're kind of taking some liberties there if you go with that. But you can get Moycano by sub at plus 250. I didn't bet it, but I'd maybe look at something like that if I was going to. Next up, Nazareth Prost versus Bobby Green. This is one of those fights that I feel like it could play out closely enough that on paper it maybe makes sense to take a shot on the underdog, which would be Prost here. But then, you know, that's how I feel in theory. But then every time I like play out this fight in my head, I do see Bobby Green winning it, even though it could play out pretty closely. You kind of, you know, you never really know what you're getting with Bobby Green for sure. That whole like which guy is going to show up thing. You know, Bobby Green absolutely can be a world beater if he decides he's going to be on any given night. If, you know, he's got the skills, if he decides to fight smart and use them the way that he should. You can't really count on him necessarily doing that, but I do think that he's going to be the better fighter here. He's the bigger guy. He's got the bigger reach. Yeah, I do lean Bobby Green to win here. Next up, we've got Arlovski versus Vandera. When I first saw the underdog number on Vandera, I was kind of interested in that. I kept kind of coming back to like, you know, Vandera's he's the bigger guy. He's the younger guy. He's not super skilled, but he's decent and he's consistent. You know, he keeps consistent output. You know, he seems to hit reasonably hard. And, you know, Arlovski obviously he remains very serviceable. You know, he's found a style that works for him at, I think he's 43 years old. He's a little bit older than I am. He's found a style that works for him. It's nothing flashy. It's nothing crazy, but he understands where he's at in his career and he understands the style that he needs to employ in order to make it work for him at this time. And he does that really well. So, you know, the more I thought about it, Arlovski's going to be the better boxer here. You know, could Vandera potentially, you know, make the fight dirty and catch Arlovski with something? Maybe, but yeah, I ended up leaning Arlovski in the end. And you can actually get Arlovski. You can get Arlovski by decision at plus 110, which I don't think that's a bad spot if you were looking to do something on this fight. How are we for time? All right, we're doing good. We're rushing right through here. Next up, we've got Roxanne Modafferi in her retirement bout versus Casey O'Neill. This is a fight that I've done a lot of thinking about, a lot of watching tape, a lot of reading. And I love Roxanne Modafferi simply because my favorite fighter archetype is the martial arts nerd who basically ended up competing in MMA to test themselves as a martial artist. Not even that they're a person who has like a fighting mindset or anything like that, but they're just more so like, I dig martial arts. I want to know how good I am at martial arts. And this is a good way to do that. Like I grew up a martial arts nerd myself, and that's how I ended up interested in MMA. So I kind of connect with those people. But I think, just to put it right out there, I think Roxanne Modafferi is a great bet here at the numbers she's at. I locked her up at plus 310. I saw somebody on Twitter today saying they got her at plus 380. Do I think it's reasonable to favor O'Neill to win? Sure. But at you know, when you're getting Roxanne Modafferi at implied probability to win of like 24% or even as low as 20%, I feel like you got to take that here. And that's largely based on the read that Roxanne Modafferi struggles most with fighters who are very, very physical. I mean, her last couple fights were Taila Santos and Viviane Araújo. Those are two very powerful, very athletic women. I mean, obviously, Modafferi's not much of an athlete. You know, she's one of those people who's had to work for every bit of skill that she has. When you're a person who doesn't have a lot of strength, a lot of natural athleticism like that, you have to learn the techniques and you have to learn them right and you have to learn them well and you have to get good at them. Using jiu-jitsu as an example, someone who is really strong and is really athletic doesn't always have to learn the techniques exactly right because they can kind of power through things sometimes and that sort of thing. Modafferi is the kind of person who has had to learn everything properly by the book because she doesn't have that strength and athleticism to fall back on. And so I think, you know, the number one weapons to use against her are, you know, the strength, athleticism, just the horsepower. And I feel like not that Casey O'Neill is super unathletic, but I don't think she's anywhere near the athlete that has typically been really problematic for Roxanne Modafferi. And so then I think it comes down largely to just the technique. And I think Roxy can hang with anybody when it comes down to technique. Obviously, she's not a great striker, but Casey O'Neill's not a great striker either. And I would say that Roxanne Modafferi has her boxing game. She's turned her boxing game into something that is serviceable and that works for her. I kind of liken it to what Damian Maia did later in his career. You know, he was never a great striker, but he was able to put together a striking game that worked well for what he wanted to do. Roxy looks very awkward on the feet. Her punches look very awkward, but she throws straight punches. She doesn't loop. She understands that she's not especially fast. I mean, if you're a fighter who doesn't have that really fast twitch, dynamic ability to be really quick with your punches, you're going to want to throw straight punches so that you're not, if you're looping them, you're just slowing yourself down even more. So if you're throwing a looping punch as a slower, less athletic person, and you've got a faster, more athletic person in front of you and they're throwing a straight punch, guess who's going to get there quicker? So Modafferi does a nice job of, it's a pretty, bare bones type of boxing game, but she does make it work for her. She's not going to knock anybody out, but she can hold her own on the feet. And yeah, I bet Roxy here, and I really like a bet on her here. And I really hope she can win. I rarely get like emotionally invested in fighters, and I rarely care who wins a fight unless I have a bet, but I like Roxy a lot as a person, and I hope she can pull this off. All right, I talked about that fight for too long. Next up, we've got Kyler Phillips versus Marcelo Rojo. Kyler Phillips is hugely favored here, which I think makes sense. In his last fight with Raulian Paiva, we saw him come out a little crazy and try to get the finish in round one. He a 10-8 round there, and then he ended up losing the rest of the fight. I think I'm remembering that correctly because he kind of gassed himself out. But one thing I'll say about that, Kyler Phillips is a guy, he was clearly gassed in round 2 and especially in round 3, but he still fights pretty effectively gassed. I mean, you could tell he had slowed down. You could tell his strikes weren't as powerful. His movements weren't as fast and explosive, but he still fought pretty well. He still kept a decent output. He still went for takedowns. He still tried to scramble to better positions on the ground. I mean, he still fights pretty well tired. And hopefully he's not going to blow his wad this time. Hopefully he'll have learned from that. So what I did end up betting here, I ended up betting the round props for Kyler Phillips to win by submission. I bet Phillips by a submission in round 1, in round 2, and in round 3. I think the lines I got on those, I think round 1 was plus 1,200, round 2 was plus 1,800, round 3 was plus 2,200. I'm going to show my bets at the end here, but I think that was it. But so yeah, if Kyler Phillips wins by submission, I make a tidy little profit there. So that'll be nice. Next up, we've got Carlos Ulberg versus Fabio Charante. Obviously, Ulberg's a fantastic striker. In his fight against Kennedy, we saw him really getting busy and landing strikes. Obviously, the way that fight played out didn't work out in Ulberg's favor. But again, like I said with Phillips, we're going to hope that Ulberg learned from that. He kind of unloaded a little bit and blew his wad. Fabio Charante, he really just isn't very good. I don't feel like he's ready to be at the UFC level yet. I feel like he's a little bit like a deer in headlights out there in his 2 UFC fights. We just haven't really seen anything from him yet. He hasn't really had a chance to get his game going in the UFC yet. I think he could use a little more seasoning before being at this level, just kind of getting comfortable. He doesn't seem comfortable out there. That said, I did put a little sprinkle on Fabio Charante to get a submission. Let me find the number here. I got a little sprinkle on Fabio Charante by submission in round 1 at plus 1,600. Charante does have, I think he has 8. If you count his amateur fights, I think he has 8 submissions. I could be wrong, but and 4 of them were by rear naked choke. We haven't seen him look to grapple in the UFC. But if we think about it this way, I mean, he's had 2 fights and 2 quick losses. He hasn't had a chance to show much of anything yet. And he's got to also understand that a loss here is almost certainly going to mean walking papers. I think he's going to want to come out here and make a statement and show that he's better than he has shown so far and show that he wants to keep his job. And the smartest way to do that, his best path to victory here, is to go to the ground, right? I mean, Carlos Ulberg is a kickboxer. Obviously, he's working at City Kickboxing, right? he's probably not a fantastic grappler. Obviously, he's going to be working on his takedown defense. He's going to have basic skills there. But that's got to be Fabio Charante's best path to victory, because Ulberg is so busy on the feet. Charante is very hittable. Ulberg's very hittable too. But if Charante comes out with that game plan where he's like, I'm going to drag this guy to the ground and submit him, I think there's a decent chance he can make that happen, assuming he doesn't get caught and dropped before that. But yeah, I would say I lean Ulberg to win, but I took that little sprinkle on Charante by sub in round one, because I think that plus 1600, I think there's a better chance of that happening than that line suggests. All right, clipping right along, we've got Ronnie Lawrence versus Mana Martinez. Ronnie Lawrence is a pretty touted prospect, and I can see why. His game is still a little crazy, a little raw the way he puts it all together, but he's definitely got a lot of natural ability and a lot of technique as well. But yeah, I think Ronnie Lawrence will come out and be able to get the takedowns here. He's very relentless with his takedowns. He comes out and he times them really well too. He doesn't really force it like, okay, this is when I'm going to decide to get a takedown. He sees those moments, he sees those opportunities, and he does a really nice job of coming in with reactive, well-timed takedowns. I think he'll be able to get takedowns on Mana Martinez here. And I think so. Last I looked, Ronnie Lawrence was something like a minus 300 favorite. You can flip that minus 300 favorite into a plus 200 by betting Ronnie Lawrence inside the distance. He did get a finish in his last fight. I think it was ground and pound in round 3. If he's able to regularly get takedowns on Mana Martinez here, which I think he can, Lawrence, he stays busy on the ground. He's not just a guy who finds his position and hangs out. I mean, he's capable of putting out the kind of output on the ground that will allow the ref to leave them on the ground, not stand them up for the entire round. So I think if they're on the ground and he's putting out that kind of output with ground and pound, I think there's a decent chance that he finds a finish here. So you can get Ronnie Lawrence inside the distance at like plus 200 or thereabouts. Next up, we've got Jacob Malcoon versus Aj Dobson. This is an interesting fight. It's tough to know much about Aj Dobson with the footage that's available. He's obviously a guy who he comes out and tries to get the finish quickly. He's very explosive with his strikes. He's also a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, I guess, and allegedly he's pretty decent on the ground. I don't think he's going to be on Malcoon's level if it goes to the ground here. So, it's kind of a simple breakdown for this fight. It's likely that either Aj Dobson comes out like a bat out of hell and finds that finish in round 1. And if he's not able to do that, I think there's a good chance that Malcoon kind of drags him, is able to get takedowns and drags him into deep water and is probably able to find a finish on the ground. And it's especially interesting, the dynamic of this fight, because of what we've seen from Jacob Malcoon in these two particular fights. We saw him get finished very quickly by Phil Hawes. I always mix up Phil Hawes and Phil Rowe. Phil Hawes, yeah. We saw him get sparked out in the first round, very similar to what Aj Dobson will look to do. So it worked there. But we also saw Jacob Malcoon versus Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who is another fighter who has that same style, who looks to come out and finish you in the first round. And Malcoon was able to stifle that game and was able to control Al Hassan, take him down, wear him out. So we've already seen this fight kind of play out in both of the two different ways that it can. So that's kind of interesting. But I do have a bet on Malcoon here. I got him when he was at plus 130. I do favor Malcoon to be able to survive that early onslaught and drag Aj Dobson into deep waters. Next up, we've got Douglas Silva de Andraj versus Sergey Morozov. I've seen a lot of people betting Morozov's money line at like minus 200, minus 210, which I personally wouldn't do. I think it's reasonable to favor Morozov to win here, but I wouldn't bet that number. I actually ended up betting de Andraj. I put 1 unit on him at plus 180. Essentially, I based that on the idea that, like, will Morozov get takedowns here and control de Andraj for long spells? It's possible, but even watching Morozov's fight with Khalid Taha, there were little glimpses of things in that fight that I think de Andraj might be able to exploit. Obviously, de Andraj, he's an absolute hoss. The guy's physique makes absolutely no sense. He's strong. He's athletic. He's got veteran savvy. You can't really bring something to the table that he hasn't seen before. And we did see Khalid Taha catch Morozov at times, And I think if Andraj is able to catch Morozov in some of the same ways that Taha did, it could be problematic. I think if Morozov is able to get takedowns, I think we might see Andraj be able to scramble out of those spots. So yeah, I took a shot on Andraj at plus 180. I thought he was worth a shot there. Oh, only 2 fights left. Next up, Jeremiah Wells versus Blood Diamond. I love that they've actually changed it to just Blood Diamond on Tapology now. Michael Mathetha. Yeah, Michael Mathetha. Blood Diamond. Really hard to know. Really hard to get a read on this fight. I was able to find just a few seconds of Blood Diamond's MMA footage, and it was where he got a rear naked choke against an opponent who was 0-0. So you don't really get much out of that. I did find some of his kickboxing footage, and I wasn't even particularly impressed with him as a kickboxer, to be honest with you. That with the little bit that I watched, we have seen Jeremiah Wells come out in his his Warley Alves fight. He came out hard, looking to strike. If I remember correctly, I think Warley Alves. It was more so that Alves slipped than that Wells got a takedown. But when Alves slipped, Wells got on top of him. So we've seen him come out. We know that he is willing to come out hard and fast like that and pressure and look to force his game. I think that's probably the way to go here. You got to be careful coming in on a kickboxer like that so he doesn't find a counter. But I think his best bet here is, you don't want to give a guy like Blood Diamond a kickboxer. You don't want to give him a chance to set his feet and to get his game going. So I think if Wells comes out fast and hard and chaotic and looks to get Blood Diamond to the ground right away, I don't think there's any reason he doesn't find a sub in that first round there. So you can get. Oh, I forgot to say, yeah, for the Aj Dobson versus Jacob Malcoon, I like a bet on the under 2.5 there as well. But Jeremiah Wells versus Blood Diamond, you can get Wells by sub in round 1 at plus 350. That's a spot I don't mind if you lean Wells to win. Otherwise, you could cover both by playing an under here as well. Oh, and finally, I love this card because look at this. It kicks off with William Knight versus Maxime Grishin. That's a cool fight. Like right off the bat, we're getting some. So yeah, we kick off with William Knight and Maxime Grishin, right into Wells and Blood Diamond, Andraj Morozov. Yeah, it's a cool card. It's going to be a lot of fun today. But anyway, William Knight and Maxime Grishin. I did bet Maxime Grishin here. I just did it last night. I did a lot of thinking about this fight, and I was typing up some breakdowns and stuff, and I eventually decided that Grishin was worth a shot on the money line at. I think I got him at minus 165. I don't know what to make of William Knight missing weight by 12 pounds. Obviously, he took the fight on, I think it was between 2 and 3 weeks notice. I saw an Instagram post where he indicated that he was 242 pounds when he got the call. So I don't think it was necessarily that he had an injury or anything went wrong or whatever. He just accepted a fight he probably shouldn't have accepted because he was probably in a spot where he just wasn't able to make that weight. So I don't read too much into him missing the weight there. I think Grishin is a huge light heavyweight. William Knight is a huge light heavyweight too in his own way, but he's also a small light heavyweight in a way. Feels weird to use the word small to describe him, but you know what I mean. The dude's only 5'10". He's a bowling ball of muscle, but he's short for the light heavyweight division. Whereas Grishin, when you see Grishin in there, I mean, he has fought at heavyweight before. When you see him in there, he looks like a heavyweight. I mean, he's a big dude. I like William Knight's one of those guys that he really relies on his strength and athleticism. He doesn't really have that much of a game. I mean, he's getting better. He's working on it, but he's a guy who can really rely on just being incredibly strong and athletic, and that works for him a lot of the time. I think Maxime Grishin, the guy's got over 40 fights. He's got a well-rounded game. He knows how to come in with a patient, measured approach. He knows how to use the things that he's good at. I think Grishin's gonna look to stay at range and pick William Knight apart. I think we could see William Knight look to try to push Grishin up against the cage and that sort of thing. But Grishin is good in those spots. If it goes to the ground, there's a good chance Grishin gets the better of those exchanges as well. If you were gonna bet William Knight here, I would think you'd want to bet him by KO. I can't imagine him. It's hard to imagine him winning a decision here. I kind of lean toward Grishin to win by decision. I don't hate a shot on that prop as well, but I did bet him at minus 165 on the money line. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at, did that switch? It did. Let's go ahead and take a look at the bets that I have here. If you look at the top there, you'll see that I've got a bet on Brunson and a bet on Cannoneer. I can't remember if I mentioned this already, but I grabbed Brunson early when he was at plus 170. And then the money line moved enough that I was able to grab Cannoneer at minus 145 and guarantee myself like a tiny bit of profit, like 0.1 or 0.2 units or something. I decided that was worth it. You know, like it would have been more ballsy of me to just ride with that initial underdog pick, but I wasn't brave enough to do that. I decided to take the guaranteed profit. I did put 1 unit on Roxanne Modafferi at plus 310. I think she's a great bet there. I did put 1 unit on Jacob Malcoon at plus 130. I put 1 unit on Douglas Silva de Andraj at plus 180. And then I put 2 units on Maxime Grishin at minus 156. And if you look there, you'll see the little pad of paper with the pencil. If you ever want to read my my breakdowns, go ahead and betmma.tips/erikblock. That's ERIKBLOCK. You can always check out my breakdowns, written breakdowns there if you want. And then as for props, I have a lot of bets on this card, more than I usually have. I bet Hernandez versus Moycano to go under 2.5 rounds. Put 1 unit on that at minus 120. Dobson versus Malcoon under 2.5 rounds. I put 1.5 units on that at minus 135. And now my chalky ass parlays that I do every week. I've got Lawrence and Phillips, 1 unit on them, plus 109 combined. Excuse me, Adesanya and Green, 1 unit on them at plus 125. Like I said, I took that little sprinkle on Charante by sub in round 1. And then I also bet each of the round props for Phillips. Phillips by sub Phillips by sub just in general was at plus 500 or plus 550 or something. But, you know, I did the math on these and it turns out better to just bet, you know, put a tiny bit on each of the rounds. So if he wins, I make a decent little profit there. Awesome. Well, that's all I got for you, folks. I do appreciate Jack Attack. I don't know if he's still here or not. I'm not sure how to tell that, but I appreciate you popping in, Jack Attack. Good luck to you tonight. To any of you who are watching this later on, thank you so much for watching. Oh, make sure to pop in. Just like every week, I will be doing the Best Bets show on the DFS by the Numbers YouTube page. That's with DFS by the Numbers, Narco Cop, and Uncle Wheezy. It's awesome to be working with those guys. They're guys that I've been following and looking up to for a long time, and now I kind of get to hang out and break down fights with them, even though I'm sort of the new guy. So that's kind of exciting to have an opportunity like that. So make sure to come check us out there. That's at the DFS by the Numbers YouTube page. If you haven't yet, please give this video a like. Please subscribe to my channel. I appreciate that. Check me out on YouTube, or excuse me, you're on YouTube now. Check me out on Twitter at Erik Bets Fights. And thank you so much for stopping in, everybody. As always, let's play it smart, let's play it tight, and let's grow those bankrolls. Have a great one, everybody. Take care. Now I got to figure out how to stop it. Here it is.